Well, you saw it in the title. Bleeding Hearts defended a Somali rapist from being deported. There is some nuance in the story, so I'm going to start off before reading into it with a simple conundrum. If someone is a rapist and they're to be deported, but you know they will be killed if they're deported, should they be deported? That's not necessarily what's going to happen in this case. I'm just saying it's an interesting question, right? Does the fact that they committed this egregious crime, which in my opinion is tantamount to torture, disqualify them from the protections of the country they're in? Meaning, if they're going to be killed, so be it. Or do we say, look, this dude's a monster, but he shouldn't be killed? Do you get the death penalty for committing rape? This is a conundrum. But there is nuance. There is nuance. The reason I ask that is because I think it's interesting and there's no clear-cut answer, right? I don't think we should be... Now, I'll give you my full opinion. In this actual circumstance, they claim the guy will be killed if he gets deported. I don't know if that's true. Maybe. I don't know if that's true, though. The issue is, should the country he's a guest in be forced to pay for his incarceration and his life and his food in prison? But should they have to do that, considering he essentially kidnapped and tortured, I believe, a citizen? I'm not entirely sure, but he committed this insane crime. But outside of that question, let's read the story. This is from the Daily Mail. How could bleeding heart plane passengers stop my rapist being deported? Young mum whose screaming Somali attacker was kept in the UK by Heathrow mutiny reveals her fury at the intervention. The 27-year-old mother sitting beside me at a suburban park. Oh, I hate stories that start this way. Just tell me what's going on. They say today his victim breaks her silence. In an exclusive interview, condemns the holidaymakers who stepped in to defend him, ignorant of the horrifying attack that ripped her life apart. This video, you can see I just watched it. It's probably one of the most annoying videos. It's probably one of the most annoying videos I've ever seen. You know what? I'll mute it and play it because So here you can see they're kind of holding the dude down. He's screaming. He's just screaming. Somebody walks up. The passengers don't know what's happening. And some guy's filming. And then he turns and yells, they're trying to take him away from his family. This is what's really frustrating. These people on this plane are all yelling, take him off, take him, no, don't deport him. And they intervene. But they don't know why he's being deported. I wonder if these people on this plane would actually still defend this guy if they knew what he did. And I'll tell you what he did. Now, I'm going to give you guys a graphic warning. I know I'm just going to be telling you a story. It's in here. But you've been warned because now I'm going to go into the story. And yes, some people might not want to hear it. There was a young woman who, according to the Daily Mail, was around 16 at the time. And she went to a bar, I believe it was, with a friend. And I don't know the drinking age drinking age in the UK is. Maybe it's 18. So apparently she said that she was going through a rough patch. She left her home when she was 16. She was out at a bar with a friend. Her friend had her bus pass and her, her stuff. And her friend kind of disappeared and she lost track of where her friend was. This dude walks up and apparently claims, I believe it was this dude, claimed that her friend just left with their friends. They're going to his flat to hang out. And she says, okay. Was that a smart thing to do? Absolutely not. She was 16 at the time, right? So kind of a dumb teenager. But she does I'm not trying to blame the victim here. This guy they're gang rapists, right? So what happens is they bring her to the flat and then she explains that as soon as she got there, she realized she was just lured into a trap. They close the door. Her friend's nowhere in sight. 4 guys come out, or 3 other guys and him. They pin her down. They take turns. She eventually breaks free, escapes. People see her, crying, screaming, running. The police come, they arrest all these guys. That was 12 years ago, and this dude is now being deported. And my understanding is that it's due to this crime. Or maybe not. Maybe it wasn't due to this crime. But he was being deported. He was convicted and jailed. He was sentenced, I believe, to 30 years. So my understanding is that he is being deported for this crime. Let's read this paragraph to make sure we have the details straight. For Hannah, not a real name, those pantomime-style cries were as nothing compared to her terrified screams as she fought for her life during Ahmed's gang attack in a dingy flat in North London in 2007 when she was 16. You think that was a bad scream? Try hearing the screams that I made. She asks why the bleeding heart passengers would intervene, and she asks them, how could you defend a rapist? How could you intervene? He was in handcuffs. He was being taken out of the country. Who are you people to interfere with justice? Fair enough, you didn't know the situation. But now I hope you feel proud of yourselves because you stopped something that I have waited for so long, something that made me feel a little bit safer. Her 4 tormentors were jailed for a total of 35 years. And while one is believed to have died after fleeing to Syria to fight for ISIS, she is haunted by the thought of seeing the others who have now been released and remain in the UK. Ahmed's deportation would have given Hannah a modicum of comfort. Excuse me. But since the failed attempt to kick him out, her mental health has collapsed. Already struggling to cope with the complex post-traumatic stress disorder triggered by her rape, she is now too terrified to travel more than 2 miles from her home. In November, she said she quit a job that she loved due to her mounting anxiety and stress. A lot of the time, I just feel hopeless. It's never going to end. I'm never going to get away from it. They need to deport him. How have they allowed this to happen? It's an absolute farce. I thought there was meant to be victims' rights. Where are my rights? Officials escorting Ahmed on the flight to Turkey last October abandoned his deportation shortly before taking off after around a dozen passengers, unaware of his sickening crime, took pity on him and angrily intervened. The 3.5-minute video posted online showed passengers waving camera phones amid a barrage of shouts and whistles. One bearded British man in a blue t-shirt approached Ahmed before telling fellow passengers he says they're separating him from his family. His family's here. Man. One guy comes up and says something like, they'll kill him. You can't do this. They'll kill him. And that's the conundrum. That's what I brought up, the initial conundrum. It's like, as I mentioned, do you get the death penalty for what he did? I don't think so. I'm 100% opposed to the death penalty. However, should we protect him in this space where he's done this horrible, horrible thing? Or look, man, it's on. I'll put it this way. I am not in favor of the death penalty. I think the death penalty is 100% wrong, should be abolished completely, but we should bring back exile. The only problem is territory is basically controlled by everybody, so you can't really exile people anymore. The way I see it is, we need to, someone like him should not be in our community because he's dangerous. But should we have to take care of him for the rest of his life? That's a huge challenge. I think if the state decides they're going to use their authority to restrict you from movement, then they have to take care of you because you are unable to work for yourself. I also think that prisons should have some kind of self-sustaining fishing. People should be, to some extent, they have to rely on themselves and work. We don't do anything like that in the U.S. But here's the thing. What if we could, hey man, we're going to remove you from our society. You are free to sail the oceans to your heart's content. I get it. We're not going to buy a boat for every criminal, but the idea generally is, if exile was an option, I think it would be appropriate. Unfortunately, jurisdiction has expanded basically to the entire world, so I don't know what you do with it. But it's better than, killing somebody. In this circumstance, sending him back to Somalia, they say he'll die. Well, are they actually going to take him from the airport and bring him to an execution chamber? Or are you just saying that some people might kill him? Or is it possible he dies? Look, I get it. Somalia is a really dangerous place. I don't see why they would kill him over this. If they knew or didn't know he's being deported. But is that our responsibility? Honestly, I don't know. And the only reason I would say I don't know is because this guy basically kidnapped and tortured a teenage girl with 3 other guys. And it's not a cut and dry situation. If it was like a normal refugee dude, or maybe it was a petty crime, we'd be like, we really wanted to be careful on this one. But this dude literally kidnapped and tortured a young woman. So at what point do you say, look, you reap what you sow? That's the conundrum. I don't know. I don't think someone should be pushed into a situation where they'll die. But at the same time, this is not the same thing. This is not the state being like, yep, you're going to die. It's them being like, hey, man, you're going home. You figure it out. Right? But let's read on. Another man jabbed his finger at an official, drawing his finger across his throat for dramatic effect, barked, when he gets to Mogadishu, they're going to kill him. To applause from the passengers, the four-strong Home Office team finally relented and frog-marched Ahmed from the aircraft as one holidaymaker shouted, "You're a free man." Wow. You're a free man. Congratulations. This is why knee-jerk reactions are dangerous. This is why you cannot just... Too many people think they know what's going on and they're smarter than you, and they do things like this. I'm sure all these passengers thought it was a routine deportation. I'm sure they were thinking, oh, this poor asylum seeker. And one of the most frustrating things is how the guy yells, they're taking him away from it. They're separating him from his family. His family's here. So easily manipulated by a gang rapist. Yeah, it's tough. We want to fight for justice. But when you trust, like, who do you trust? The guy in handcuffs who's being deported or the law enforcement officers who are deporting him? Well, in this circumstance, it seems like at least enough people didn't trust the law enforcement officers. And so they sided with the gang rapist man who tortured a young girl. Yes, I say tortured because they held her down and took turns. This sickens me. It does. And you know, what I was thinking about, excuse me, what I would do in a situation like this. What would you do if you were on a plane and a bunch of passengers started screaming no and they refused to sit down? You can't do anything. If one passenger stands up and refuses to sit down, they can't leave. The plane can't go. They might try to arrest you. What if 4 passengers? Well, maybe they can arrest the 4 passengers and remove them and then carry on. But in this instance, it was around a dozen. With this many people yelling, even if you're like, dude, please, can we just fly? Nothing you can do. They're not going to come in and arrest everybody. The only option at that point is free, like not deport the gang rapist. It's mind-blowing. So naturally, this woman, Ahmed's victim, known as Hannah, for the article, not a real name, is devastated. And that makes me even more angry. Even more angry that this dude was convicted, his friends, and one of his friends, apparently, they believe, died joining ISIS. And these are the people being defended because people don't know what they're doing and they take knee-jerk reactions. I'll tell you exactly, this is a good example of one of the biggest problems the left has. They think they know. They think they know and they don't take the time to find out. Could you imagine if they just asked one of these law enforcement officers, why is this happening? What's going on? And he said, this man and 3 others pinned down a 16-year-old girl for hours and took turns on her. They'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to defend that guy. And maybe he'd go sit down. Instead, everyone just yells. And this is what we see. Activists defending the worst of the worst. Now, look, if there are people there who knew what was going on and they were sincere when they were like, yeah, but you can't kill him, that's a tough call. It's a tough call. But at what point does this woman get her justice? That the criminal who did this horrific attack will face justice. They're actually defending the rapist. It's mind-blowing, mind-blowing. And this is what happens. Look at the Me Too movement, which has done good things in my opinion. Like we know some of these people, Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, bad dudes, right? And some other really crazy stories. But there are innocent people who have been, targeted or lied about. And because of the refusal to actually dig deeper, look what they did to Brett Kavanaugh, right? This is what they do. They say, I know I'm right, therefore you must do what I say. And that's one of the most dangerous things ever. This man right here yelling, they're separating him from his family. That sickens me. So easily tricked and manipulated. Why would you believe the guy locked up in handcuffs? Look, I'm the last person to defend law enforcement. I've recounted stories on this channel of how I've had police, kick my door in. Me and my friends were surrounded at gunpoint while covering protests in Chicago. I have not had overwhelmingly good experiences with police. But if I see 2 parties, a guy in handcuffs and a cop, I'm going to be like, listen, I don't know enough to intervene. I don't. It's just not something I'm involved in. What can you do? In this instance, these people who think they know better stood up and saved, bless their hearts, a gang rapist who tortured a young girl. Well, congratulations. You've done it. Look at, my God. One man yelled out, you're a free man, after they got him off the plane. I don't want to read through the rest of the story. I'm going to leave it there. Stick around. I'll have more videos coming up later in the day. The next video at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you then.